A lot to talk about on this episode of the J Area Podcast. What's going on, everybody? My name is Jose Ramos Jr., and we knew it would be an eventful weekend of pro wrestling with both Money in the Bank and NXT Heatwave taking place this past weekend, both in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. But I think one of the biggest headlines coming out of the weekend, obviously, is Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. Their feud has dominated WWE television for the last 7 months, realistically, ever since he returned, that being CM Punk, returning at Survivor Series. Pretty much solidifying himself as one of the top guys, just solely based on name value, solely based on reputation, and really sole on place on just his ability to attract viewership to any company that he is a part of. CM Punk vowing that he would not allow Drew McIntyre to be a world champion so long as he is breathing, so long as he is around, and so far, CM Punk has lived up to that billing. Heading into Money in the Bank, obviously, if you watched my prediction video regarding the Money in the Bank event, you would know that my pick, I said right in permanent marker, Jey Uso. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Obviously, Jey Uso did not emerge victorious. For a second there, I thought he would. They gave us this little false finish in which he was on the top of the ladder, was about to retrieve the briefcase, but then Drew McIntyre coming out of nowhere, stopping him, and actually winning the briefcase himself. In that moment, right, I'm going to do initial reactions. In that moment, I'm thinking he didn't need it. You know, Drew McIntyre, he's a top-tier talent. He's a main eventer. I am always of the mindset that the Money in the Bank contract should be going to someone who has not won a championship. Perhaps someone that isn't a main eventer yet. Someone that can benefit from this push. So seeing Drew McIntyre winning the Money in the Bank contract, I thought, okay, in terms of narrative and the story that they're telling, very ironic. And that's the first thing I had told my family while we were watching it. I said, I think it's ironic because Drew McIntyre, in his quest for that World Heavyweight Championship, kept getting foiled by Damian Priest, who at that time was the holder of the Money in the Bank contract. You go to WrestleMania 40. He has his one-on-one matchup with Seth Rollins. He's locked in. This is the most focused we have seen, Drew McIntyre for quite some time, to the point where he wins. He successfully defeats Seth Rollins and winning the World Heavyweight title, but he loses focus afterwards as he begins to taunt CM Punk. And in that moment, CM Punk retaliates, gets physical with the Drew McIntyre, opening the door for Damian Priest to finally cash in that Money in the Bank contract that he held for nearly 300 days. So how ironic is it that the man that complained, that the man that was so critical of the way Damian Priest won the world title, now has the very same tool, now has the very same means to become World Heavyweight Champion. And I thought, okay, this will be interesting. Maybe we're going to tell the story of, Drew wanting to cash in. Here comes Punk to foil him. Okay. Next time, here comes Drew to cash in, and Punk is back again to stop him. Every time, Punk is just there. When it comes to the Money in the Bank contract, another thing I'm not a big fan of is the same night cash in. We've seen it so many times. The first time we saw it happen was in 2010 when Kane did it, and it was cool. It was a novel idea. It was something different. It had not happened. But especially when you look at the women's side of the Money in the Bank matchup, we've seen, let's go ahead and count it down, right? We've seen in 2018 Alexa Bliss do it the same night. In 2019, Bayley did it the same night. In 2020, Asuka won the briefcase, and the next night, not 24 hours, but the next night, she would end up getting the Raw Women's Championship because Becky Lynch was pregnant. In 2021, Nikki ASH, would win the contract, cash it in the next night. In 2022, Liv Morgan won the briefcase, cash it in about an hour later. It's been done. It's been done to death. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like when they do it so often. If it was every now and then, okay, fine, no problem. But I look at it in the sense of character, right? Drew McIntyre heading into this event, He said, I will win the match and I will cash in the same night and leave Money in the Bank as world champion. That was one way to, cover their end, the WWE. Because now you just flat out told us what his plan is. So what I liked moving forward into the World Heavyweight Championship matchup between Damian Priest and Seth Rollins, ironically enough, the same three players involved at WrestleMania 40. What I liked is you saw Damian Priest keep looking over his shoulder, keep looking at the ramp, anticipating one of two things. And this is another interesting aspect of the story. In that match, Damian Priest said, I can do this on my own. I don't need the Judgment Day's help. So from one end of the spectrum, you could say he's looking over his shoulder because he doesn't want that involvement of the Judgment Day. But on the flip side, I think very much so, it was, well, Drew McIntyre's out there with the Money in the Bank contract. I cashed in on him. What is stopping him from cashing in on me? So now it is the duality of the two dilemmas that a champion such as Damian Priest is having to face. That matchup meant so much to Damian Priest. Damian Priest, and we're going to segue into the Judgment Day side of the story for now. Damian Priest, his story has been, I want to be a fighting champion. I want to be a true champion. Not a paper champion, not a transitional champion, a legitimate world champion. But what has happened over the course of his world title reign? He has had interference from the Judgment Day at Backlash. He has had interference from CM Punk at Clash at the Castle. This was his opportunity to say, nah, bump that. I can do that on my own. I don't need to have outside interference. I don't need to cheat to be the world heavyweight champion. That's the story that he's been telling. And that's why a couple weeks ago on Monday Night Raw, Damian Priest said, the Judgment Day needs me more than I need them. And that rubbed Finn Balor the wrong way. But looking at it from the perspective of a Damian Priest, he just wants to prove himself as a legitimate world champion. Holding that Money in the Bank contract for so long and having people criticize him for not cashing it in here or trying to cash it in here, or would he be a legitimate world champion? That eats you up. Whether or not people want to acknowledge it or not, that stays with you in the back of your head. And on top of that, it doesn't help when you have these side stories such as Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, such as JD and Braun Strowman. Now you have Drew McIntyre, who is the current holder of the Money in the Bank contract, looming around. You know he's coming. He's already told you, I plan on cashing in the very same night. And so there's this moment in the matchup where Seth Rollins hits a move and he goes for the pinfall on a Damian Priest. The referee counts 1, 2, and seemingly it seems that Damian Priest missed his cue in terms of a kick out. That is to be studied by someone else. I'm not going to scrutinize or criticize Damian Priest for that. It's like Triple H had said in the post-conference show, we're all human. It did make for a little bit of a unconventional transition into the next phase of the matchup, and it did kind of ruin the momentum of the match itself. But this is when Drew McIntyre would emerge. He would have the Money in the Bank briefcase in hand and was making his way directly to the ring to cash it in. And again, I'm here thinking, okay, he said he's going to cash in. So this is all lining up. But I'm thinking, okay, maybe someone stops him. Obviously, I think Punk is the guy that's going to stop him. So we're looking for Punk. But then the bell rings. And now it really hits. We're in it. This is the cash in. No matter what happens, this is the one-time deal that that Drew McIntyre has at this opportunity. And there were moments in the matchup where you're thinking, oh my God, it's a triple threat match. Anything goes. Seth is there, Damian's there, Drew is there. Who's going to win? Now you have open opportunities, open possibilities as to who Gunther will be fighting at SummerSlam. Will it be Damian Priest? Will it be Drew McIntyre? How about Seth Rollins? And just when you think Drew McIntyre has it in the bag, out comes CM Punk, right on cue, and he prevents Drew McIntyre from winning the matchup. He sets out and does exactly what he said he would do, and that was to prevent Drew McIntyre from becoming the world champion. He allows Damian Priest to win the matchup. And what I love about this current state of the WWE is how open they are to allowing the commentators to talk about a story. It's not all about formulaic sentences or pushing some type of advertisement or having specific vernacular or vocabulary that they're supposed to spit out into the microphone. Michael Cole said it best, how this now changes the landscape of the WWE, that CM Punk has done something big. What had happened at Money in the Bank in terms of that World Heavyweight Championship could very well have ramifications, consequences, a ripple effect that will fall into WrestleMania 41. So long as Damian Priest is the World Heavyweight Champion, because of his victory, Seth Rollins cannot challenge for that title. Now, granted, this could all change if he loses at SummerSlam to Gunther, because then it resets for Seth. But in this moment in time, CM Punk not only cost Drew McIntyre another World Heavyweight title opportunity, but he cost Seth Rollins his shot. We don't know for sure how long Damian Priest will be world champion. Obviously, the common assumption is that he will be dropping the title at SummerSlam. But again, for now, for the story that is taking place today, he is still the world champion, and Seth Rollins cannot challenge him, reestablishing the beef that he has had with CM Punk. You saw him get visibly upset, his body language, you can sense the tension. And CM Punk's focused on Drew McIntyre. That's the guy he has. Seth Rollins is just collateral damage. He's just whatever's happening in the background. If you happen to catch a stray, then so be it. Seth Rollins begins to approach CM Punk, but then there's Corey Graves who's pushing him off, saying, hey, it's not the time, not right now. In the process, Punk has cost Drew and Seth Rollins both very well their last opportunities at the world title for the foreseeable future. But then also, he influences the direction of the Judgment Day and Damian Priest. Why? Because just like I mentioned earlier, Damian Priest desperately wants to be a champion's champion. But this is now 3 events in a row. Backlash, Clash at the Castle, and now Money in the Bank. 3 straight events that he won his match based off of interference. They are purposely booking Damian Priest in this way where it seems like he can't get it done on his own. But what I find admirable about it is it's not like Damian Priest is taking advantage of it. He's made it very clear. He's been very vocal. I want to do this on my own. I don't need anybody. And I think that's going to open the door for that babyface run. You look at his interaction with Finn Balor, saying, I need you guys to stay back there. And Finn Balor already having this sly sense of, a scheme, saying, whatever you say, boss. I think this is going to open the door for them to turn on Damian. We are supposed to believe that Damian Priest is safe. He's still a part of the Judgment Day, but the cracks have been forming since his days as Mr. Money in the Bank. I think it's going to be one of those deals where we're going to jump you before you can jump me. And that's not to say that Damian Priest is going to jump the Judgment Day or get rid of them. But that's the sense I get from Finn Balor. He's already had this growing resentment towards Damian for quite some time. It could very well happen as soon as later today on Monday Night Raw. Or, I think more likely, probably after SummerSlam. I think, Damian Priest. All these names being thrown at once. I think Damian Priest will still be a part of the Judgment Day en route to the SummerSlam matchup against Gunther. But CM Punk, to run back to that, has now affected 3 different superstars and the trajectory of their years coming forward. And speaking of the coming year, how could I not talk about John Cena? John Cena, for many of us around the same age frame and demographic, has helped us pretty much grow up. I know for me personally, I began watching pro wrestling in the year 2000. John Cena would debut on SmackDown in 2002. And then from then on out, we saw the growth, the development, and basically him solidifying himself as one of those Mount Rushmore wrestlers. John Cena, for me, and for a lot of other people growing up, was the definitive face of the WWE for quite some time. He would have fantastic matches and rivalries against the likes of Randy Orton, Edge, CM Punk, just to name a few. He's main evented countless WrestleManias, SummerSlams, Royal Rumbles, you name it. He was the Hulk Hogan of a generation. He was the guy to beat. He represented a lot of the ideals that, quite frankly, a Superman would follow, and that's where he got the name Super Cena for quite some time. And I know in his time at the top, he was criticized, he was ridiculed, but that's what they do when you're at the top. Now that his career was coming to a close, that we knew that there was less time ahead of us than there was behind us, we all recognized and knew that his time was coming up, and we needed to not only acknowledge him, but appreciate what he's done for the business. So when he comes out at Money in the Bank, obviously donning a new colorful t-shirt, has his little towel there, his hat, and you start to read what it's saying on the t-shirt, what it's starting to say on the merchandise. And it was very telling that on the back of his t-shirt, it said, "After this, you can't see me." And it starts to hit. John Cena announces that he will be retiring in the year 2025, marking 25 years in the wrestling business and 23 years in the WWE. I look at his legacy, I look at his just career, and it speaks for itself. A 5-time United States champion, a 4-time tag team champion, a Money in the Bank winner, 2-time Royal Rumble winner, and probably one of his most impressive feats, a 16-time world champion, tying the record with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. He announces that next year's Royal Rumble will be his last Royal Rumble. Next year's Elimination Chamber will be his last. And next year's WrestleMania will also be his last. The question is, who will he be fighting in these events? Will he win the Royal Rumble? Will he fight the champion at WrestleMania? I think the main question a lot of people are asking themselves, are they going to break the record? If anybody should break that record, I think we can all be in agreement. John Cena has earned that right. A 17-time champion. Even if it's for a month, I think personally the sweet spot's only 2 months, just so it doesn't seem like it's a transitional thing. I think very well he's earned that right. I would love to see John Cena win the world title or the WWE title, but given how the current landscape is saying, I don't know if Cody Rhodes is the guy right now to lose to John Cena. Maybe he drops it to, maybe, hear me out, we all know about this feud with Randy Orton. And I don't know if I've said it on the podcast or if I said it privately in other conversations, but I have thought of that idea that Randy Orton could be the guy to beat Cody for the WWE title. I think Randy is a credible heel, when he's a heel, obviously. He beats Cody Rhodes, setting up the matchup for John Cena versus Randy Orton one last time for the WWE Championship. And having John Cena win, then, assuming this is the route they can take, you have him fight Cody, because I think that's another money matchup that we want to see. Cena versus Cody. Having Cody beat Cena in a passing of the torch, because it's been well documented. Cody Rhodes is certainly the babyface that the WWE has been looking for since the days of John Cena. He is the perfect company man. He's great with the kids. He's great with the PR. He looks fantastic in a suit, and with the World Championship on his shoulder, he's ideal. So if WWE wants to go that route, please give me a call, and I would love to help out in creative. But again, going back to John Cena, this is when we really need to appreciate not just John Cena's greatness, but just everyone. Guys like Rey Mysterio, who don't have much time left in their careers. Obviously, you need to appreciate them while you can. Same thing with like a Randy Orton, CM Punk. A lot of these guys were the stars that I watched growing up, right? But the Money in the Bank event was not only home to the Drew McIntyre saga, to John Cena announcing his retirement. It was also the crowning achievement for Tiffany Stratton. She would emerge victorious from that women's Money in the Bank matchup as the new Miss Money in the Bank, and it's only going to be time until we see a pink Money in the Bank briefcase. I think it was the right call. If you want to go look back in the predictions video, I did say Tiffany Stratton would win that matchup. Again, I think it was the right call. I think she'll do great with this current gimmick, running with it. And I'm thinking, as a little spoiler for SummerSlam, I think we might be seeing a new women's champion, having Bayley facing Nia Jax. That'll be an interesting little story in between because Tiffany and Nia have a little bit of a team, going on at the moment. So that'll be interesting to see. SummerSlam is taking shape. Obviously, we know it's emanating from Cleveland, Ohio. Something different, right? I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, it'll be a great turnout. Hopefully, we'll get some great matches coming up. I know there's a lot of stories to be told en route to SummerSlam. But one of the biggest stories of them all, I think, was the conclusion of Money in the Bank. Bloodline versus our babyface group of Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and the WWE champion Cody Rhodes. And what I thought was an interesting choice, and I'll get to it in a moment, but I did select the Bloodline as the winners of this 6-man tag, and I think it was the right thing. When you have this new incarnation of the group, you want to present them as credible heels, as a credible force that can take almost anybody. And I think that's the route that they took, and having Solo Sikoa pinning Cody Rhodes. He becomes only the 4th individual to pin the American Nightmare ever since he returned at WrestleMania 38, with those 4 individuals, of course, being Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, The Rock, and now Solo Sikoa. It's basically confirming what we already knew. SummerSlam is going to be having Solo Sikoa challenging Cody Rhodes. Obviously, it's not official yet, but that appears to be the route we are taking when it comes to that storyline. I think Cody Rhodes obviously wins the matchup. Just a matter of how. Will we see interference from a Jimmy Uso? From a Roman Reigns? I don't know. I don't think they will. I think they're going to want to protect Cody, have him win the match clean, and then afterwards, perhaps that's when we see, Paul Heyman, Jimmy, and Roman return. That's just wishful thinking on my part. But the Money in the Bank event, I think, truly was the perfect halfway mark. It was halftime, if you will, for the WWE. We see a lot of stories that were coming from WrestleMania season now transitioning into the next phase. You look at the Bloodline. Heading into WrestleMania, it was Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. We're now transitioning to Solo versus Cody Rhodes. You look at the world title scene. It had Punk, Damian, Drew, and Seth Rollins all involved in some capacity at WrestleMania 40, and look at what the Money in the Bank event had. Those same 4 individuals all interacting with one another. I think, I think about it this way. You look at NXT Heatwave. A lot of people, and I can agree with them for the most part, said that Heatwave was overall a better show than Money in the Bank. I think in terms of match quality, that would be hard to argue. I'm a big story guy. I like to be invested in these matches. If there's not a story in place, you can still have a great matchup and have a story within the match. But once you got me hooked on the story, then the match it's all a part of the process. You look at NXT Heatwave, just to quickly talk about it. A great tag team match that saw Chase U lose to Axiom and Nathan Fraser. We had a great set of women's matchups. Kaylani Jordan, all this excitement over NXT Heatwave, successfully defending her title, as well as Roxanne Perez, in what I thought was an underrated matchup. You go back in last week's episode, I talked about the Roxanne Perez and Lola Vice segment, and how I thought personally it didn't deliver. It didn't land for my taste. But the matchup itself, I thought was great. It honestly will be the lasting legacy when it comes to that story, if that makes sense. I don't even want to think about that segment leading into the matchup. The matchup itself I thought was fun. I thought it was great for what it was. I thought it really showcased Lola Vice in a great way that now cements her as a main eventer in NXT. And Roxanne Perez, the Prodigy, nothing but great things to say about her. But I think what everyone is talking about. And what was really the shocking moment of the night, I thought it was a possibility, but I did not think they were going to pull the trigger on all ego Ethan Page winning the NXT Championship, especially the way that he did. And you want to talk about creativity. You want to talk about a creative finish. Wow. So the lead up, obviously for those that have watched NXT Heatwave, you would know how it all ended. But to see the way that Trick Williams nails Javon Evans, causing him to hit the ground, then nails Ethan Page, causing him to fall on top of Javon Evans, and then Trick Williams is unable to prevent the pinfall because Shawn Spears pulls him out of the ring, and all he has to do is watch the referee count to 3. It was fantastic. I thought for sure, okay, he falls on Javon Evans, Trick Williams easily breaks up the count because I thought Trick was going to win. But then you see Shawn pull him down out of the ring. And the moment it hits 3, my jaw dropped. I did not expect to see all ego Ethan Page win. And again, especially in the way that he did. It was such a fun and creative finish. I love what they're doing in NXT. It was, I think, one of the better matchups of the weekend just because of that entertaining and just the high emotion that led to that finish, because we all love Trick Williams. I love the story that they're telling between him and Javon Evans, where they're supposed to be almost like a mentor and protege. There was that level of respect, but at the same time, Trick knew, I got to bust you up to retain this title. And you'll look at the way that, Ethan Page is just smiling. It's the perfect, I love it. I love it. I love when a heel can just get out of these situations and they have this smile that you just want to hit them. Ethan Page did not, by all accounts, did not earn that win the way anybody would want. He just happened to be at the right place at the right time. But there's nothing we can say or do. He's the NXT champion. So I look forward to the progression of the character, but also where it leads next in terms of the main event scene for NXT. I think obviously the go-to matchup would be Trick versus Ethan Page in a matchup. Maybe at the Great American Bash, which we just saw, is going to be advertised for, I believe, August 6th. On the Sci-Fi Channel. But another thing on the conclusion of NXT Heatwave, for a second I had to catch myself. I thought, did I really just see this? Because you can see obviously in the bottom corner, you had the little watermark where it says that the show's ending. And you see Ethan Page holding up the NXT Championship, again with that stupid smile on his face. And as the screen begins to fade to black, it turns white. And you see Joe Hendry. And I'm thinking, did I see that right? Was that a glitch? Was this an advertisement? Or, I don't know. And realizing it's Joe Hendry. Say his name and he'll appear. Joe Hendry did mention in his last appearance in NXT that he'll come whenever he wants. Whether it's NXT, SmackDown, Raw, it doesn't matter. So it's very much a possibility we will see him return again in NXT, very much in the same vein of the Marvel movies where they have like the little, Spider-Man will return or Thor will return. Joe Hendry will return. We just got to keep an eye out because as it currently stands, Joe Hendry is scheduled to compete in a 6-pack challenge at Slammiversary for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. How interesting would it be? Joe Hendry wins the TNA Championship and appears on NXT. Now that would be just crazy. Never have we seen the TNA World Champion. We saw the TNA Impact, Knockouts Champion with Jordan Grace, but never the TNA World Champion. Fantastic. NXT Heatwave and Money in the Bank, I think both delivered. I had a great time watching them both. Great matchups. I think obviously from the Money in the Bank aspect, I thought the men's ladder match was great. Loved the women's ladder match. The world title was fantastic. Was surprised to see Sami Zayn get a clean victory over Braun Breaker. But now that initial honeymoon phase regarding Braun Breaker and his undefeated streak is over, I think we're now due for a much more vicious, a much more dangerous, and definitely a much more angrier version of Braun Breaker. Obviously, we had the 6-man tag that led to the Bloodline winning. We had NXT Heatwave, and now we move forward. We look to NXT, the Great American Bash. We look to SummerSlam as well as AEW's All In and All Out. TNA Slammiversary is coming up as well. A big time summer of fun when it comes to pro wrestling. But what are you guys thinking about in terms of this past weekend's pro wrestling? What is the main headline in your opinion when it comes to Money in the Bank or NXT Heatwave? And who do you think will come out on top? Will it be Gunther or will it be Damian Priest for the world title at SummerSlam? Regardless, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you guys again for joining me on this episode of the J Area Podcast, and I will see you all in the next episode.